Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to all of our fans around the world and around this great country of ours. This is another edition of Focus with Ron Frierson.
Yes, it is.
I am your host, Ron Frierson, and to my left is my co-host and good friend, Mr. Woody Wilson. Say
What's
hi
up,
to the
Ron?
people, Woody.
How's it going? Hello, everybody out there.
Going. Hey, everybody, this has
Crazy
been
day.
Crazy week. Crazy week. So many places to start. So what I will do is I will start with my rant, which is what I typically do. And with my rant this week, I want to speak on what's in the news and what's dominated the news over the past few hours, and that's the exit of Britain from the European Union.
That's huge.
Otherwise known as the EU.
Wow.
Okay. So the EU, just so you guys know, it's
not EU freeze.
No, it's not EU freeze. It's the European Union, and it's essentially grouping, let's say, I think it's 28 European nations, and to make it into one economic power, so they can freely trade goods and services and people and things of that sort. And with the EU, what it allows for is each of these small countries that are located within Europe to team up with other countries and to form, an economic power that can rival with economies as big as the United States. It has its currency, the euro, and things of that sort,
right,
to rival with the dollar, and it competes with other major reserve currencies around the planet. This is a big thing. Well, like with any group or any team, you have your star players, and then you have your role players, and you have the bench players. Great Britain is one of the star players.
The star player.
Yeah, well, one of them. I mean, Germany would arguably be the biggest,
correct.
Well, the most vibrant economy. But London is huge. It's a very much so a star player. And by London and what I should say by Britain deciding to exit the EU, it can devalue the EU, and those companies that contributed to this union, this economic union, are not being counted now. They're separate now, and this is a trend. This is a trend that's been happening around the world because of these basically trade policies. There's a lot of nationalism going on now, a lot of protectionism for the most part. If you think about the people in Great Britain that were fed up with immigration, lax immigration laws, the people there fed up with the current economic environment. It's a lot of people that feel as if all of these different trade agreements are only benefiting a certain sector of the population, a certain sector of the people, and then at the same time, there's a huge portion of people that are being left behind, because along with the free flow of goods and services and inward and outward migration, you may have the race to the bottom in regards to labor, and so you can get labor done somewhere else, which displaces jobs from one portion of the union, so to speak, to another, and so it's a lot of unrest, and so there are some positives for the United States, and there's some negatives for the United States with this what they call Brexit, which is basically the exit of Britain from the EU. Some of the positives are that right now there's been a flight away from stocks, equities.
Yeah, the Dow's down 500.
Exactly. The Dow lost over 600. The Dow was 611 points. It closed at 6. That's a huge drop.
Wow.
But that's the equity market. In the equity market, people are pulling their money out of stocks because they understand the ripple effects. And I guess that this was a surprise to the markets because they thought that the British people were going to elect to stay in the EU, and so they were braced for I think it was called not a Brentry, but they had, just like they had Brexit, they had something that Britain or something like that, whether you could retain Britain in the EU.
Yeah, and when I went to sleep last night, it was...
Yeah, so they cooked that into the books, but then when it turned out to be different, there was a massive sell-off, and the sell-off may not even be finished yet. It may take place on Monday as well. But anyway, so because of that, that means there's a flight away from equities, and equities are basically stocks. Stocks are equities. So everyone is pulling money out of stocks, which is why we had that major sell-off today, and they're putting that money into bonds. Treasury
and
bonds.
Gold.
And stocks are ownership, so you rise and fall. Bonds are loanership, where you lend money to the government. This regards treasuries, and they must repay you. So it's a lot better bet to. It's usually lower yields, but it's a much better bet when you put your money into bonds because the government has to pay it back. It's a loan as opposed to ownership. And so anyway, because of this huge influx of capital and this money going into these bonds, it's allowed for us to have a lower interest rate. Okay, so if you have a lower interest rate, that means you can get a house now for a lower mortgage rate.
Buy now.
So all those things coming. So this is how it benefits us. Also, it could result in lower gas prices and things of that sort.
You're right. Cash is king right now.
Exactly.
American dollar, that is.
Yeah. So, but on the flip side, the thing that could hurt everyone as this thing moves forward if it's not done properly is, number one, this is tearing apart economic force that kind of bound Europe together for the past 70 years, okay? And so what it could do is that it could cause financial instability. And since everything is connected, financial instability in a certain major market like in Europe, that could ripple effect and affect every financial market across the world. Yep. Remember what happened back in 2007, 2008. It could really affect us. Another thing is the risk of it heightens, I should say, the risk of a global recession.
51% now.
And especially, I think one of the biggest issues they may have, Woody, is that this could be a domino effect wherein, because if Britain leaves and they don't have any sort of punitive measures for leaving, and remember, one of their major reasons for living is because they think they can do better without the EU, and they don't need to have the troubles that come along with the EU. And what if other countries decide to do the same? What if France, or what if Belgium, or what if these other countries start? And if that happens, and we have a massive, sort of what's the word, protectionist sort of view, or a nationalist sort of effort, where all these countries start to just go within themselves. When that happens and there's very little cooperation across borders, especially in Europe, that's not a good recipe for lasting peace throughout Europe, especially when you have this influx of immigration
and
across
Germany
borders.
At the helm.
The influx of it's crazy. I never really blame President Obama for much. I mean, he's obviously, I think he's a great president, but I don't think anyone's perfect. And what I'm about to say is about to really bring that home, is because part of this is him.
I don't understand how he could be blamed for this. I mean,
not
blamed
for it in particular, but this is the deal. Okay, and then this, you have to go back.
I mean, he tried to affect the decision, the outcome, in a positive manner.
I mean, policy-wise, that's true too. Well, he tried. Usually, you don't really weigh in on other countries' economics, saying that if they don't decide,
you
to
think
stay
it was a negative
EU,
that he did?
I think that he should have just stayed mute on that, but that's not the way. That's
what the Republicans
wrong.
are saying, that he should have stayed mute and not.
Yeah,
gotten
he probably
involved.
should have stayed mute on that, because that's not something. It's just something behind closed doors, but it's not something wherein a foreign leader should come into another country and tell it publicly to the people that if you vote this way, then we may act like this. Yeah. Unless, of course, you don't know. Maybe David Cameron, who's going to resign now, maybe David Cameron may have said, "Hey, maybe you might want to say
I need
this
your help."
Yeah. That could have been the case.
Yeah.
But I think where the president messed up is that a lot of the reason why the people voted this way was because they were so fed up with what was going on with immigration.
Yeah, the borders were just wide open doors.
The borders, and with their influx of now because they're the sentiment in Europe because of what's happened in Paris and things like that, and there's the heightened anxiety of that.
In Syria,
it's just not, in Syria, that's where it was.
Yeah.
Syria,
exactly.
That's where the president, because the president didn't do what he said he would do with that red line of Syria. That in itself, and I hate to say it, but that in itself,
well, it's like a ripple effect, right?
It's very
so he
much
drew the
so.
line in the sand and said, if you do this, if you cross this line, we will respond. And he didn't. And Congress,
didn't.
of course.
Syria got worse, then became crisis, then came the refugee crisis.
Right.
And that refugee crisis has spilled throughout Europe.
And what was the trade-off, though? War, correct?
Yeah.
War in Syria.
Yeah.
Did we want to go to war? I think Americans would have voted at that time.
But that's not
vast
really
majority
the
would
issue.
have said
The
no.
issue is that if you say you're going to do it, then do it. If you don't say you're going to see, that's the one thing that I was speaking about in regards to Trump. What a president says becomes policy, and different countries maneuver themselves based on what a president says, based on the president's
of
word.
the United States. Yeah.
Yeah, of the United States, exactly. So because our president says something, that's baked into the cake. Every now and again, you'll get someone that will test our president's word, but because he put it out there, he has no choice but to follow through with it.
Right.
Unless he can come up with some way to gracefully bow out of it.
Which is why Putin is buzzing our ships, is because he doesn't think Obama will follow through with anything.
So because he didn't do what he said he was going to do in regards to Syria, you can just go from one step to the other, and then you may be in a situation where you have the refugee problem, which has pretty much destabilized Europe and made a lot of European countries kind of look within themselves and try to rebuff immigrants when at one point, or refugees, I should say, when at one point they used to welcome them. Now it's getting to a point where there's a lot of unrest.
And that's a good point, that you brought it, because I didn't even look at it from that perspective in terms of, and that shows you how powerful the presidency of the United States, that office is. Because he didn't act in Syria and draw the line like he said he would, those refugees had to scatter, and they scattered into Europe, and everyone kind of panicked, and they voted themselves out of the EU, which led to this disaster, which could have worldwide implications.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's huge. And the political unrest in Europe, we all know what the 20th century was like in Europe. The 20th century in Europe was war-torn. There's constantly things going on in Europe, and which is one reason why America is such a great country, is because we, for the most part, we require people that come here to take on an American identity. Whatever the old stuff going on in your old culture in the old world, when you come over here, put that stuff to the side, because now you're American.
It's like being baptized.
Exactly. So all that being said, it's not looking good, and I'm not. I hope that it's really delicate on how the EU and how the Europe, the capital of Europe is in Brussels, Belgium.
Right.
The capital of the EU is in Brussels. It's going to be really interesting and crucial, very important, to see how they are going to manage this exit, which is going to be a process, the exit of Britain from the EU. Well, because it has to be in some way, they have to not be too nice, because then the next country that may be thinking about it be like, okay, Britain did it and it worked well for them, maybe we'll do it. And
well, that's yet to be seen. But globalization is in effect free trade, right?
Yeah.
So with the British pound being affected, I think it's down 13%. And that's going to affect trade, and that's going to have a ripple effect around the world. So we really have to hold on, tighten up our seatbelts, and see what happens and how the markets react to this. I mean, maybe long term this will be a good move. Who knows?
Yeah.
But right now, short term, it's the second strongest economy in the EU, next to Germany, as you stated. So the ripple effects, they're coming. It's like a tsunami. It's on its way. We don't know how high the waves are going to be once it hits mainland, but if I were you, I'd save. I wouldn't go out and buy that Range Rover you're thinking about, or whatever it is, because this could affect the worldwide economy.
The thing is that there's already such fragility in the global economy.
Exactly.
There's such fragility.
And we haven't bounced back 100% from the recession
of
2008.
And the fact, and there's how we always say the word on the street? The streets are talking, and the streets see everything.
Right.
And so
always
there's a reason why Bernie Sanders, really caught on with people. There's a reason why Donald Trump, I hate to say it, caught on. Donald Trump, if it was just only about celebrity, we've had other celebrities. Remember Fred? I can't remember his name. He used to be on Law and Order. Fred, can't remember his name. Anyway, he's also an actor.
No, I don't know.
And we've had plenty of actors that have, run for office, and plenty of celebrities and pretty well-known figures. But it's something in his message outside of even the racist stuff, which he's putting his foot in his own mouth, which is the reason why he shouldn't be elected.
Who we're talking about, Fred?
We're talking about Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, okay.
Yeah, that's the reason why he won't be elected. But in regards to some of his policies, the reason why he's catching on in some of those Rust Belt states is because he is bringing to the fore on that side some of these unfair trade policies.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot
system.
of unfair trade policies out there.
And then, so I think that him and Bernie Sanders, although just completely different in regards to, in my regards, in the way they carry themselves and the way, which side of the political spectrum they fall on, but they do have a common strain throughout their message, and that strain is the wealth inequality. Okay, that strain is the unfair trade deals in their regards.
Very unfair.
And the way that the system seems to be rigged.
We had a trade deal with South Korea that they could export cars to the U.S., but we could not import cars to South Korea. So that to me doesn't make any sense. And I understand it's a smaller economy and they want to build their local businesses and corporations and make it stronger, which makes sense. I mean, that's a great deal for them.
Yeah.
But for us, you've got to come up with a number.
So you're saying that they can export cars to sell here in the United States, but we can't import cars to them?
To the U.S., yeah.
Okay, so is it
I'm not sure if that practice is still in place, but I know at one point it did exist.
Well, is it a binary sort of relationship where you have just one product, which is cars, or is it a situation where, okay, on the car front you can do this, but on the electronic front we can do that? Because sometimes it's not a direct binary, quid pro quo.
It's a trade deal, so there's parameters within the trade deal.
So because sometimes with goods goods that can be traded, they don't narrow it down to a specific good. So it may be autos on one end, but it may be agricultural goods on the other. Right. So that means like maybe cars, they can sell cars here, but we need to have our farmers be able to sell soy to the Koreans.
Yeah.
So sometimes that could be a little misleading. But that's interesting, though, because we may have trade deals like that. And we also have trade deals wherein we are buying loyalty. So it's not a direct correlation between apples and apples. So if you have a situation where it's a South American country that can grow because of its climate, it can grow bananas. We can, and let's say almonds, and this is completely hypothetical. This is not the case because I know we grow most almonds here in California. But let's just say it's a hypothetical crop, almonds, and let's say that so we can grow our own almonds and we export them. But let's just say in this case we don't export them to Colombia. Instead, we buy.
You didn't like bananas?
Yeah, well, because we can grow. You'll see why I'm saying that, because we can't grow bananas in the United States. But in Colombia, they can grow almonds as well. Right. So we can grow our own almonds, but we'll say no to the Colombian government. No, we'll buy your almonds, although we can grow our own almonds, but we're going to buy your almonds. What can you do for us in return for us buying your almonds so you can keep your farmers at work? What we want you to do is that we want you to make sure that you have the money to fight, drugs from coming over here, or to keep your people employed so your government can stay in power and to keep jobs there. Because if you don't have jobs there, then those people are going to try to migrate to the United States. Right. So we're going to go ahead and buy some stuff from you so your people can keep jobs there, so they'll stay there, so it won't be our problem. Right. A lot of parameters built into those trade policies. So some of these types of trade deals, it takes place in many forms, and I don't think we know a lot of them. Yeah. Some of them are the ones like the TPP and stuff like that is on top, above board, but then there's some that are probably that we just don't have all of the fine details about. But yeah, it's really interesting, and it affects all of us. I know it sounds like Britain is so far away, and what's going on in Britain, how does that matter? But that's why we have to show it, so that we can let you know how it affects you. So because what's happening in Britain, this could be the canary in the coal mine.
Yes, it could.
And if it continues and this becomes a contagion where there's a breakup of these financial kind of heavyweight trade agreements, then that will definitely affect the United States, because everything is now connected.
Everything's connected, folks. And I would advise, this is my own personal opinion, this is not the official view of the station or the show, but I would advise that right now you take a look at purchasing a piece of property, because mortgage rates are at an all-time low. You'd be surprised if you're paying $2,600 for rent, you can get a mortgage payment for the same thing. So lock that in, 30 years fixed. Don't worry about it adjusting, and then save your money, because this really could affect. This could have a huge ripple effect. If you're thinking about going out and getting that boat or that luxury item, I would hold off on that and just stack your chips and put your cash in your closet and ride this out. And it may take a couple of years, but at the very least, lock yourself down with a nice piece of property, because now's the time to get it. It's now or never, because rates will never be this low. And you don't have to worry about the Feds raising interest rates right now because of what's going on in the marketplace. So
that's true. Well, the interest rates, I mean, okay, with monetary policy, that's an entirely different thing, because you can only get so close to zero. And then after a while, zero is just baked into the cake. Where we are now, Jessica, and I'm talking about monetary policy now.
Okay.
At the Fed, Jessica Yellen could not raise interest rates right now if she wanted to. It would throw everything out, because everything is built right now on zero. And if we were to raise interest rates at all, it would be a major fluctuation in the market. But this is where this also hurts, though. What this hurts, we're talking about buying properties and all that type of stuff. And if you have it to do, that's fine. A lot of people don't have it to buy properties and things. But if you do, that's fine.
Right.
But where this is also felt with these very low interest rates is if you're in a fixed income. If you're in a fixed income and you're living off your interest, so to speak, then this right here will hurt you a little bit, because
listen, if you're going to retire right now, if you got money in the bank, I mean
if you're already if you're already retired.
Right. Interest on money is very low right now, which is why people look for other options in terms of investing their money, their funny money. But you're absolutely right. And because the market's crashing right now, 401ks are down significantly. So if you were on the verge of retirement, just hold on. Don't cash out. It will bounce back. There's ebbs and flows in the market always. Just hold on to your money. It will return. It may take a year, may take 6 months. None of us really know, but we're all watching intensely. But do not cash out right now while it's at its lowest point.
Very true. That's very true and very smart. And you look at the historical perspective, all in all, the Dow was down 611 points, but that's basically 3%.
Right.
It was down 3%. So our economy is huge.
Right.
It's huge.
Right.
So even though,
but still, that's a lot. That's very, very significant.
That's very significant. But if you take it into its totality and look at a macro view, it's down 3%. 611 points is pretty much equates to 3% because of the huge economy that we have.
Right. Yeah, but that's significant.
No, we're not going to argue about the significance. Of course, there's significance, but you have to take into account this is not doomsday. This is not 2007.
No, it's not doomsday. It's not the worldwide recession.
What we hope is that it doesn't get to the point. What we hope is that
there you go.
Let's say Monday there may still be a bit of a sell-off, but what we're hoping is that Tuesday, people will see quote-unquote blood in the streets and try to think that this is a perfect time to get into the market and buy, and goes up. Yeah. But even with the markets, though, that's still an artificial indicator. There's basically, if I remember correctly,
cash is king, though. I mean, if you got money to get into the market.
Yeah, well,
this is something. Stocks also, down.
I'm trying to remember. I think there's a little bit over 30 stocks that make up the Dow.
The Dow?
The Dow.
I think it's S&P 500, and you got
the Dow. The
Jarvis, how many stocks make up the Dow?
I'm pretty sure it's a little bit over 30. It's only 30-something stocks that make up the Dow. I'm pretty certain on this. I went in business school. I think I remember that.
30, okay.
Exactly. So it's 30 stocks that they use as a benchmark to let us know what's going on in the markets. So
those are
keep that in mind too.
companies like
GE,
IBM,
Facebook, the one. So there's a bunch of stocks, a bunch of stuff out there, but there's 30 of them that make up the index known as the Dow. Keep that in mind as well.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Don't let the Dow scare you.
Don't let it scare you. Okay. So, and you see 30. See, that surprised you didn't.
Yeah, 30. Yeah, no,
I knew it was a low number.
I mean, I went
thought
to
it was
business
33 or
class,
something
but
like that,
I just
it's 30.
yeah,
Okay.
I should know that. I was lunching on that one.
Okay. So some other things happened this year. Not this year, but this week. Things happened this year too.
Hey, well, this week is part of this year, so.
Now, this was a big week for the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
Obama was upset about
two major. Well, one was pretty much a non-ruling, and one was a ruling.
Yeah.
You want to introduce the one that what Obama was upset about? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, his Supreme Court, basically, let me start from the chess move that the Republicans made, not electing or not affirming his selection for the Supreme Court. I mean, that chess move had far-reaching implications, which occurred, was that yesterday, day before yesterday, when his policy, immigration policy, was denied. Or actually, they just pushed it down to the lower courts. The original decision of the lower courts was.
Yeah, it was saying. So basically, it was a tie. Yeah, okay, it was a tie.
Right. And had Obama hypothetically had his choice, he may have broken the tie, and he would have been a happy guy.
Because this immigration plan that President Obama wanted to put through, which we actually need,
some immigration
because it was
reform.
a tie, the lower court's decision stands, and that lower court's decision made President Obama's executive action that halted the deportation of certain minorities out of the country, kind of protected them.
Right.
It made it unconstitutional. So now they can actually be deported again.
As they were before. And if we talk on that a little bit, basically, so you have families that came here from Mexico, wherever they came from. Let's just take Mexico since we're in Southern California right now. So they come and they have children with their husband. They're not legal citizens, but their children become legal citizens. And so what happens is that immigration may come along and snatch the parents and send them back to Mexico. And you may have children who are underage, at any age you imagine, 7, 12, and some close to 17 or 18 who automatically become on their own. Now they're stuck here in America as American citizens. Parents are deported to Mexico, and they're here, with no supervision. And that's been happening across this country. And so Obama was putting in place a policy that would protect those folks, give them an opportunity, those parents, give them an opportunity to come forward and admit that they're here illegally and create a path to citizenship or temporary citizenship. So the families would not have to be broken up and devastated, essentially.
Yeah. They always say that President Obama is lax on immigration, but there have been more people deported during this administration than just about any other previous administration.
During Obama's administration?
During Obama's administration. Oh, wow. Now, the thing is that he actually wanted to put a stop to that, and that's why he issued this executive order, which is necessary. And now that the Supreme Court is unable, the Supreme Court did their job. It's just that they didn't have enough people to finish their job. This is a perfect reason why we need to have 9 justices on the Supreme Court, because now it's going to be kicked down the road, and this now it's still going to be used as a political football for both political parties to decide on who what's going to happen to this in this immigration situation. We need to have the justice that President Obama is the ultimate compromiser. I can't remember the name of his Supreme Court nominee, but he was well known as pretty much a centrist,
middle of the road guy,
a centrist, a middle of the road centrist, and as a matter of fact, Orrin Hatch, who was a very conservative senator out of Utah, once praised this particular Supreme Court nominee as being the person that President Obama should choose to go into the Supreme Court, and if he were to nominate him, he would definitely approve him.
Right.
And then fast forward to the time where it actually happened, when President Obama chose that exact federal judge, and then had the opportunity to have him, approved for the court, nominated for the court. Now he goes silent.
No vote.
Which lets you know that it's strictly political. And it had to happen during this time when we have such a major bill come across their desk, or I should say such a major decision, and they decide not to have 9 justices there.
What a chess move.
Yeah, it's a chess move. The other big thing that happened with the Supreme Court is I have it written down here because I forget stuff sometimes. That's what happens when you turn 40.
What's that?
Was that the Supreme Court? Yeah, it was the Supreme Court.
In regards to the same.
No, that wasn't the Supreme Court. That was
Freddie Jackson.
No.
Talking about Freddie Jackson in Baltimore.
The affirmative action case.
Okay.
University of Texas. They've
chose to uphold that affirmative action.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I don't understand why people keep trying to pick at affirmative action. I wish it weren't necessary.
Well,
Lord knows I wish it weren't necessary. But it's so deep. I mean, it will have to. It's so many things that will have to take place first before it was unnecessary. I mean, because it doesn't take into account structural disadvantages. It doesn't take into account that, like I said, the public school system, the lack of, inherited wealth for the most part.
Right.
It doesn't take into account so many other factors that make people truly make them on one level playing field, so that, they can just be completely looked at in this regards. It's getting worse now. I mean,
listen, folks, affirmative action is to make the playing field a little more even, or give folks an opportunity who wouldn't have the opportunity. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Edisons of the world, the Gettys, the Fords, the great wealth of those families occurred because everyone else was excluded from participating. You can't make up for that at this point. I mean, they've just gotten more and more wealthier over the years.
Exactly.
I mean, it was I'm losing. So there was you have to help me with the name. So there was a slave that was freed who invented the automobile, and he was adopted by the Ford family and showed Henry Ford his invention. So Henry Ford he wasn't awarded with the knowledge of creating the automobile, but instead he was known for automation. So assembly lines. So that's what he is credited for, but he did not create it. So had this freed slave been given the same rights and opportunities, he would have been awarded the one who invented the automobile, along with the traffic light and the elevator.
What's his name, Jarvis?
C.R. Patterson. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that we invented as a race of African Americans, black folks, the elevator, the traffic light. We can go on and on and on that we were not allowed to claim as ours, and then thusly someone else was able to take advantage of it. So we've got to make up for that through affirmative action.
Yeah, that's true. But let's make it even broader than that. Yeah. Those are that's fantastic definition. I mean, not examples, I should say. Those are fantastic examples. But this here, more broadly speaking, it's not just for those special circumstances like C.R. Patterson and people like that. It also goes towards just the basic infrastructure of development during the course of your life coming up. Right now, we're at a point where you have truly the haves and the have-nots. So, but at the same time, the infrastructure for both the haves and the have-nots aren't the same. So it means the educational system, all these things aren't the same. Also, exposure. If you're exposed to certain things, you tend to pick it up as youngsters. But if you're not ever exposed to it, you won't. So it's truly the case that most minorities have to work 2, 3, 4 times as hard,
right,
and don't get the same sort of
educational opportunities.
Well, not just that, cushions. Because you still have the same educational opportunities at times, but still you don't get the cushion.
Well, I'm talking
Meaning that,
if you're in the inner city. If you're in the inner city, so I'm in Beverly Hills. My showroom is abuts a school, elementary school. They're doing reconstruction right now. I talked to the guy, the foreman. They're spending $16 million to improve this school, paid for by the city in Beverly Hills. What do you think $16 million would do in the hood to improve some of these schools?
Exactly.
So my point is that if you're not allowed the educational opportunity from the jump, okay, this is an elementary school.
Exactly.
Okay, so if you're not afforded that opportunity, then if you don't have the basics, and like you said, you go to school hungry, the nutrition factor along with the educational factor, then it's a ripple effect that goes on throughout your life.
Exactly.
And
and you're absolutely correct, and that's a great way to put it. So that if we fast forward now to the point of affirmative action, what I'm saying,
right,
is that what's necessary to break these cycles is the exposure. So to break these cycles, so once you get someone in there of color, and obviously you have to have the aptitude and you have to have the expertise, but then once you're there, and you're there because you have this this experience, and now you have a chance through time to start to break the cycle. Seems like we have a caller calling in right now. Caller, thank you for calling in. Can I have your name and the city you're calling in from, please?
Yes, Von Nickelberry, Northville, Michigan.
Von,
how you doing, Von?
How you doing, brother?
Hey, you know what? You guys do a great job, and every time I call,
thank you.
I'm most definitely gonna present my buy one Woody suit, get one Woody suit free.
I told you that expired, man.
No, man, it don't expire. Hey, listen, I'm just listening, and everybody, and you guys are hitting everything on point, and I wish we had more of our successful African-American men who can take the time out to share the information with the community. Because to be honest, Ron, growing up, politics was something that, we kind of knew a little bit about because of where we grew. You had the unions and, you wanted a certain president in office. But the older you get, the more it matters to you.
Exactly.
So the reason I love your call is because you guys are educating people on stuff that, you know what? If you guys didn't have a show, even the callers that call in and listen, you're reaching out to them. And then, I had a lady, I forwarded the link to her, and she said, oh, my God, I didn't know that this guy was from Saginaw. She lives out there by you, Ron. And so, she tunes in sometime, but you guys are dead on the money. So
thank you.
That was my big plug and my shout out.
Oh, thank you, man.
The thing I wanted to say about affirmative action and just kind of leveling the playing field is I think that so many times when we talk about affirmative action, a lot of the people who may not know what affirmative action does think that the only people who benefit is minorities, is for the most part black folks. Well, it's interesting because white women are the number one beneficiaries of affirmative action if you look at it from its historical standpoint.
That's a good point.
And so I don't want to lose that. Now, in terms of talking about the leveling the playing field with the school system, it's not and I think Ron was hitting on it, it's complex.
Yes.
Because the reality of it is, if I gave the Saginaw School District, and Ron knows this, if I gave the Saginaw School District or the Detroit School District $30 million,
they do a Kwame Brown?
I got exactly right.
Kwame Kilpatrick.
Kwame Kilpatrick.
That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen in other communities, but because we haven't had as much access to it, that when we get a little bit, it's almost like we go crazy.
Yeah, you're right.
And so there has to be some education.
Absolutely.
There has to be, funding. There has to be training. Again, it's like basketball. I mean, if you give millions of dollars to Bays, we see all the time what they do in the NBA.
Exactly.
And people want to get upset at a Steve Smith who might give, $10 million to Michigan State University and say, but you didn't give Detroit Pershing anything. Right. Well, I'm pretty sure he would have loved to have given Detroit Pershing something. It was just that he couldn't necessarily maybe, and I'm not saying stuff don't happen at Michigan State because it does, but the trust level that we have among our own people, we need to begin.
Exactly. I'm with you, Vaughn. Hey, Vaughn, we got to cut you
short. Go ahead, cut me off. Hey, look, I want to say thank you guys very much. You guys doing an awesome job.
Thank you, man.
So
appreciate
much
it. Your
for
phone
your
was
call.
just cutting in and out. All right, thanks, Vaughn.
You, Vaughn.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Good point. He's got a good point.
Von is a deep brother.
Yeah, he is.
And,
I'm glad he calls in.
And he's a smart brother too.
Thanks for calling, Von.
Yeah, and he hit some great points in regards to who affirmative action affects. It's a broader tint, but the point is that, like he was saying, there's a lot of these things are complex. So if there's some way for you to address some of these actions or some of these things, historical kind of quote unquote injustices that have pretty much made the playing field wherein some people have to get on that wheel and churn even harder when some people just coast.
Yeah.
That means it's not an even playing field. And so sometimes it's necessary for the betterment of civilization as a whole to make sure that you try to even the playing field, because human nature is something, man. Human nature, we were once cavemen. We formed governments because we wanted to kind of put a little bit of some restrictions on our baser instinct.
Right.
You know, seriously. I mean, if there were no laws and it's anarchy and you depend, that's why I said early, and I've said this a zillion times, and I know everybody's tired of me saying it, but I got the show and I got the mic, so I'm going to say it anyway.
Say it, man. Say it.
Pure anything in regards to politics or relying on people is wrong. If it's pure, it's not good. If you are a pure socialist, it's not good, because a pure socialist is beyond human. It's not human nature to be purely socialist. That means that if I worked hard and I worked harder than everybody else, I still get the same amount as everybody else, because in a socialist society, everything is out equally and you're not benefiting from any hard work. That's wrong.
Right.
Pure capitalism,
although it'd be okay
is
right now,
wrong, because pure capitalism, especially if you are in a situation where things are already tilted towards one side winning, the other side losing,
top side wins.
You are the nature of man to hoard, to want more, our ambition, competition, to keep others down. If you are already at a clear systematic advantage and you're trying to depend on somebody in that clear systematic advantage, depend on them to try to make you whole, odds are it's not going to happen, because the only people you compare yourself to are the people you're with every day. If I was making $1 billion a year, $1 billion, and to say $1 billion, if I made $1 billion a year, I would not be sitting here comparing myself to somebody that making 200,000, saying, "Oh, they're making a great living. They're making 250,000." I will only compare myself to people that are in my bracket.
Birds
so
of
that means that
somebody,
that means that my next door neighbor, which may live a few acres away because I'm a billionaire, of course, and he's making $5 billion, and all the cocktail parties I go to is with people that make $5 billion. Then I'm going to say, "Wow, I'm making $1 billion. He's making $5 billion. What can I do to make $5 billion?" You only compare yourself to the people that are around you.
Right.
So now, how can you say what you can do for people underneath you when you're still trying to reach for someone else above you? That Jones game, trying to keep up with the Joneses, it's all localized.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And so if you depended on that for somebody to say, I've got enough, many humans, there are some exceptional human beings that just say, I don't need this. But then for the most part, they're human. They're hoarders. They want to, get as much as I can.
Rich get richer.
It's crazy, but that's just the world we live in.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so the affirmative action case is the University of Texas. What happened was that a woman at the University of Texas, a white woman, said that she felt that she was being discriminated against because she was denied entry or admittance into the college when a lesser qualified person of color was, and so thus it was like reverse racism, so to speak.
Right.
That's the long and short of it.
Does that have to be necessarily the case? Someone of lesser quality or who doesn't meet the standards of color gets accepted? Because I don't think that's what affirmative action is. It's just making sure, because I'm sure there were some African American folks who met the standard of admittance, right? Unless, if there's a certain number of, say you have to allow 300.
You make a good point, because I'm sure that in the details or something, but the point is that once it goes out to this point where it's out in the masses.
This has happened before, though.
Things are going to be simplified, and this is how they simplified it.
Yeah.
So
this has happened before. So what's up with you heard about Freddie Gray, right? In Baltimore?
Yeah.
So the case, the best case that prosecution had against the city was this driver. If you all remember the Freddie Gray case, this is why folks were in uproar in Baltimore. I'm from Maryland, so it's kind of touches home for me. So Freddie Gray was arrested, thrown in the back of a van. I guess he had an injury before that, and he ended up dying. And so the city was in an uproar, and everyone was protesting, right? So Black Lives Matter actually kind of spun off from that, and also what was going on in Ferguson, Missouri. So they had the trial, and one officer was he got off a couple of months ago, and then the best case that the prosecution had against the city, which was this driver who supposedly ran red lights and did all of these things, he also was found not guilty.
The thing is that there's a couple things.
And so, but you know, so my opinion in the whole deal is that, first of all, I don't think they should go to trial in the first place, because what they did, they weren't required to buckle him in the back of the van. He, you know, and the guy didn't run any red lights, and so the judge said, "Listen, I don't see any violations here. I cannot charge these folks, and not see any violations with the cameras that they have in the city and so on and so forth." But you know, it was a tragic death. I
think there's,
and I don't think anyone's going to get convicted.
I mean, obviously, you have to defer to the prosecutor and things of that sort, but there's certain common sense things that get lost in legalese and in legal arguments. And I think that it's incumbent upon the prosecution to bring these common sense things to the fore and somehow frame them to make them relevant for this legal matter. And this is the thing, is that he was perfectly healthy. You had a perfectly healthy young man.
He was injured, though, when they arrested him.
He was alive.
He was complaining about pain. Right,
he was
alive.
About pain after they braced him. After he was bound with the handcuffs and stuff. That's when he complained.
Okay.
So he was a perfectly healthy young man that once he was put into the van in cuffs, ended up at the end of that journey dead. So you start healthy, you have your interactions with law enforcement officers, and you end up dead. So that's just a common sense thing that happened. That's cause and effect. So what was the cause? Was it him doing it by himself, or was there something? Well, not even just that it was police brutality, but was it something that happened that made that they were responsible for? And just take it from there. What steps along the way did they do something wherein it was outside of the regulations? It doesn't mean that they had to purposely try to kill him. This could be a case of manslaughter or negligence or something like that. It doesn't have to be a situation where they purposely try to kill him. Right. It needs to be a situation where they were reckless enough in their actions that it resulted in the death of this man. That's it. I think that, and I'm not a lawyer, but it seems as if the argument is that they were trying to kill him. Were they doing something to try to kill him? I don't think they were trying to kill him. I think they tried to give him a rough ride to make things very uncomfortable with him, because they maybe are frustrated. It's a hot Baltimore day, and it gets very hot and humid over there, and they're just dealing with somebody that they thought was, or frustrations that come along with it, whatever.
Or were they harassing him like they have harassed us in the past?
That's
the question.
That's the obvious thing. Would they have picked someone up over at Johns Hopkins campus and done them the same way? Probably not. No. Johns Hopkins is there, and the University of Maryland Law School is in Baltimore as well. Yeah, I bet you they wouldn't pick up a law student at the University of Maryland or someone that works for Johns Hopkins and do the same thing. Maybe not. But the point is,
they wouldn't know the difference.
If it was a poor black guy and they thought they could do that, they did. So there you go. Now,
but it looks like everyone's going to get off.
The key is this: is that, and I always say this, is that, I have family that work in law enforcement. I have an uncle that recently passed away that was a police detective. Okay, and so this is not an indictment against all law enforcement officers, nor is it an indictment on the industry, or I should say on police officers, all of them in Baltimore as a whole. Right. I don't like to do that because they're always individuals. But if there's something in there, then it needs to be dealt with. It needs to, because you have too much power for it not to be dealt with.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I don't know. The prosecutor's probably not happy about it because she sent this case forward to get to this point.
I mean, I don't know her, but I know that. I mean, it seems to me as if
she was trying to appease the people. I think at that point.
Well, she should. She's supposed to look for justice for the people.
Just don't riot, folks.
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder whether or not this is a career aspiration. We got another call coming in. Okay, caller, could you give me your name? Thank you for calling. For one, could you give me your name and the city you're calling in from?
Michael Eccles calling from Los Angeles.
Michael Eccles. How you doing, my brother?
That's a cool name right there, Mike
cool.
Eccles.
Yeah.
How you doing, Mike?
Yes, I'm doing good, brothers. You guys always have the best topics and talking the good stuff and, educating the public. That's a good thing.
Thank you, Mike. We got like 30 seconds, so tell me what you're calling for. You can, you want to give me some money? What's up?
Okay.
You owe me some money.
The problem with the Black Lives Matters in all of these cases is what you said earlier, in that the prosecutors are mischarging these people. Mm-hmm. They should be charging them with manslaughter, not murder. The obligation and the results of charging them for murder is a much higher degree than it is for manslaughter. That's why you see these juries not convicting these police officers because they're not going to get a verdict for murder. They can probably get a verdict for manslaughter much easier. So that's what we need to change.
Gotcha. Mike, thank you, my brother. Thank you for calling in. We only have 3 minutes on the clock, so I got to let you go.
Thanks,
you,
Mike.
Mike, continue to listen. Thank you very much.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike made an excellent point. Hey, before we go any further, I have to give a shout-out to my primary sponsor, Javago Watches. Javago. Listen, you guys need to pick up these things. It's I went to a trade show, and it wasn't a trade show. It was the NBA All-Star Game last year, and Chris Paul and Jalen and all these guys, they love them, and they're wearing them. And as a matter of fact, I think that Jalen had one on during the NBA Finals.
He did. I saw him.
Yeah. So Javago Watches, guys. Go to www.javagowatches.com. They have them in both men's and women's fashions, and they're excellent timepiece, an excellent gift, and you got to check them out. Just go to the website, pick out the style that works for you, get online and get one. Or you can go to Amazon as well. And I do believe that if you get them from Amazon, you can get them at a slight discount from Amazon. You know how Amazon always makes you bring your price points down so that you can be on their site. So you can get a slight discount if you go to Amazon. But go to Javago, pick up one, and tell them that Ron Frierson sent you. You may even get another couple $1 off.
Maybe.
You never know.
Definitely get some dollars. You tell them I sent you.
Well, listen. Last thing before me and Woody sign off, just a Representative Shaka Fatah out of Pennsylvania, out of Philly, I believe. He's going to jail. 23 counts of corruption.
What did he do?
Corruption. I don't even know what.
Philly? They do it in Philly?
Yeah. It had.
Oh man, these guys. He was a politician. Crook.
Yeah.
All right. So we don't want to spend too much time.
You know what?
Crook.
We need to pay attention to who we vote for. And we really need to pay attention to who we vote for and hold them accountable, and just get solid people. You get somebody that's solid.
Pay attention, folks.
Yeah, pay attention. You get someone that's solid.
Read. Know
solid
who you're voting for.
Absolutely.
So important.
Yeah, and someone that has a good heart that's solid.
Real person.
All right. Well, we're down on the clock. We have less than a minute left, so I want to thank you guys again for listening to our show. We have some great numbers. I'm telling you. Have you noticed I haven't cursed on the show? And Grandma and my parents, I know you listen.
You never curse, man. I never heard you curse one time.
Thank you. That's
since I've known you.
That's my brother right there. No, I don't curse at all. Thank you guys for listening to the show. Me and Woody really appreciate it. Every Friday from 5 o'clock.
Show is growing tremendously. We're getting great numbers. Fastest growing show here at UBN Radio. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Tell your friends.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you're thinking about advertising opportunities, we have on average about 12,000 new listeners every week.
It's incredible.
That's crazy.
Great numbers. We're excited.
12,000 new every week.
Wow.
That's crazy. I'm going to have to start combing my hair or something. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for starting your weekend with us.
Rain.
And
have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Chillax. Enjoy your family. Unwind. Dine. I'm going to the Usher concert tonight at the Staples Center. Usher, baby! Usher! Woo!